So I'll give another example. This one's more of like a category, not a specific condition.
All right.
Well, I'll use a specific condition, and then I'll go into what I was going to say. So we'll use degenerative disc disease, because that's very popular, or arthritis or herniated disc. So their back is hurting, they're having trouble walking, standing, stooping, squatting, all of those words, lifting things. I ask the client after that, when I'm screening this person, I'll ask them, what are they doing for treatment? Because the question is, okay, you have this wrong with your back. Are you going the pain meds route? Are you going to do an operation? Are you getting the shots? Are you what are you doing? What are we working with here? Every once in a while, this doesn't happen super frequently, but every once in a while, I'll talk to someone who tells me that they're at maximum medical improvement, and that's an actual medical term. So I don't want to speak too much about it because I'm not a doctor. But MMI, maximum
MMI.
medical improvement. Yeah. If they get to that point, that is their doctor telling them essentially, look, man, there's not really anything else we can do.
Yeah, we see that mostly in worker comp settlements. MMI, maximum medical improvement. It is not a term that Social Security or the judges care about, by the way. What they do care about is somewhere in the medical records it says that, or it says it in a different way. Mr. Smith has come in. We've tried, what they call radical treatment, which would be cutting you, surgery.
Yeah.
We've tried conservative treatment, which is usually physical therapy, exercises. Somewhere in the middle, ongoing maintenance therapy is usually the medication, and that does include the shots, the epidural steroid injections. But yeah, somewhere along the line, they're going to say, we've done what we can for him. So what you're going to follow up with the question of, are you? Did I interrupted you? So.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna primarily talk about, is just MMI and how we go about that, because, back pain or I mean, it could be anything. It could be any kind of diagnosis. But to me, having your doctor literally tell you that we've done all we can, that seems like that client is going to stop going to the doctor.
Sure. Yeah.
And
exactly.
Probably the most common thing we see after that is just like pain management for degenerative disc disease. Something just to, instead of curing it, we're just trying to put up with it, like maintenance. Yeah, like you were saying.
And you're absolutely right. And we went to, our first example, an amputation. That's pretty drastic. But you're right. Things that are more common, which degenerative disc disease is, any kind of back disorder is, I think it's number one as far as allegations in disability claims nationwide. But you're exactly right. You got to think about that. If you were from the outside looking in, and you're like, what has this person done to address the he's got a herniated disc? What has he done with that? And again, Social Security, what they're looking for is, they'll almost always start out with very conservative things. You need to do these exercises at home, and hopefully it'll loosen up your back to where you won't be hurting so much. But then you come in, 2 months later, and the back problem is still really bad. It's shooting down my leg all the way into my toes or whatever. And so they're like, well, let's give you, an ESI, an epidural steroid injection, and that's literally, it's a shot in the back, and it's, supposed to kind of numb the area. You come back in 2 months later, and they're like, you're probably a surgical candidate if you want to do that, but it's up to you. And you're like, well, yeah, I can barely get out of bed every morning. Let's do something. And you have surgery, and here's the bad news, guys. I speak from personal experience here. Surgery works for the first 5 or 6 months. You're going to feel like a new person, and thank goodness they did that. They got it all squared away. I'm good. Oh, wait a minute. Feeling a little bit stiff today, and 8 months later, you're at the same point. That's what I hear from 90% of my clients when it goes to surgery, specifically a laminectomy. So you and your doctor talk about it, and it might work for you, because it does work for some people. But for the majority of cases, especially for folks in their 50s, or older, and they have that. They'll say the same thing. And for a few months, I felt like a new person. I was a Superman. And I was able to do everything. Then it kind of got bad again, and now it's as bad as it ever was,
Yeah.
or sometimes it's worse. So let's say you do that. So you've gone down from exercises, then you had the ESIs, the injections, and now you've had the surgery, and several months later you're like, it's still there. It's still shooting down into my leg, which indicates that there's some neurological involvement. It's hitting a nerve somewhere. What are you going to do? You're not going to do another surgery because now you're mad because
Yep.
the surgery that you had didn't work. They're just going to prescribe stout pain medication for you. It's almost always going to be an opioid, and it's going to work, but you're going to be loopy, and they're probably going to say you can't drive or operate heavy machinery on this. There are going
Yeah.
to be some restrictions. And I say everything, and I went through the list like I went through because that is exactly how Social Security will look at that specific disorder. Well, really any kind of disorder. Did you start with a conservative treatment, and then you move to kind of a more in-depth treatment? You went all the way to what they call radical treatment, which is surgery. They cut you. And then after that, if that didn't work, you're kind of on a maintenance program there. They're gonna give you pills, or they might have you come in every month for a shot. I mean, and it's all pain relief at that point.
Yeah, and that is valid treatment. That's valid medical
Absolutely,
records.
yeah.
If a client gets to the point where they're not trying to have any other surgery and they've tried everything, like you said, and they're walking with a prescribed cane and they're on heavy narcotics, and they just see their pain management doctor every 1 to 3 months, that's fine. We would put that pain
Sure.
management doctor or provider as a medical source, and that's valid.
Yeah, but let's say, back to our question, let's say all that happened, and it all happened 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, when you had the back injury, or it got so bad that you couldn't work anymore, you went in, they gave you exercises to do. You went in, they gave you epidural steroid injections, and you had that for 2 or 3 months. You went in, you begged them, cut on me, please, 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 do something. My pain is excruciating. You had that, and here we are 2 or 3 years later. What happened after the surgery? Well, it's going to be documented because they're going to bring you back. Your surgeon is always going to bring you back. How did it do? And 2 months later, they're going to feel like they're the best surgeons on planet Earth. We solved this man's problem that he's been dealing with for years and years and years, and blah blah blah. And then the wind is going to go out of those sails because 5 months later, their client or their patient is going to be coming in and saying, "I'm having the same problems, and I think it's getting worse." And so all that happens like 3 years ago. Are there going to be medical records? Maybe. There may just be like, every 6 months or so they show up to the doctor and he, are you doing any better? No. Okay. I'm rewriting you a script, and here's a 90-day supply of Lortab or oxycodone or whatever. And pain management is going to be the same way. Pain management, there's not really going to be a whole lot of treatment involved, as in, let's try this and let's try this. Pain management is just here is the pills that we're going to give you. And by the way, every time you show up, you got to pee in a cup, because we got to make sure that we're giving you this medication. It better show up in your urine, because if it doesn't, you're not taking the medication the way you're supposed to, and that can be really problematic for you with Social Security. They're going to wonder, where's the medication going to? Especially if some of the pain management companies make you bring in your bottle, and you have three tablets in it left. That's where it should be, and then they take your blood and they're showing either none of that medication or just a trace of that medication. Now they're like, you're giving it away or you're selling it or something like that, and it can turn into an absolute mess. Again, speaking from experience, I've seen this with many of my clients. So pain management, it is a natural progression, but if you're looking for pain management records to show treatment, the only treatment is that they're going to make sure that you're you're taking the medication that you're supposed to, and they do that with a urinalysis, and they're going to ask you, on a scale from 0 to 10, for since we've seen you last 3 months or so, what's your pain level been like? It's an 8. Okay, they still need it, and they'll write you the script or whatever. You're not going to get a whole lot of, range of motion here. We're going to do a straight leg raise, straight leg raise. They do 2 of them. They do one of them where you're lying on your back, and they lift your leg up, and if it hurts, they say, okay, well, they got to 45 degrees, and they're just looking at your face, basically, to see if you're wincing in pain, or they got to 90 degrees, you should be able to get to 90 degrees, or you're sitting at the edge of the exam table, and they lift your leg, and, he got to 90 degrees, and, he was wincing, so they do that, and that just shows neurological involvement, but you're not going to see a lot of that in pain management. So, my long answer to your short question is you have to go somewhere to basically report that you're having the limitations. The ADL is going to be great, and you brought up just the general ADL, the Activities of Daily Living form. If you have a seizure disorder, most states have a seizure questionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
If you have there's other things that we haven't talked about on the podcast that are a little bit more specific. Chronic fatigue syndrome. You have chronic fatigue syndrome, there's a chronic fatigue form or a questionnaire that they send out. The pain questionnaire is universal. I think every state has that. They're going to send that out if you're alleging problems with pain. So you have these things, and they do go a long way. The migraine headache diary goes a long way, believe it or not. That's kind of Mickey Mouse. I'm just writing it with my hand on notebook paper. Yeah, you are. And you're keeping a diary of every time that happens. And somebody looking at that is like, oh my goodness, look at this. In the month of March last year, you had 6 migraines, and they pretty much every one of them took you out of pocket all day. Yeah, that's kind of the way it is. That's disabling.
Yeah.
So.
If you have a question about your disability case, give us a call at 615-453-9151 Monday through Friday, or click the link in the description of this video.